Hello and welcome to the PIELink, our online community of practice for people with an interest in developing psychologically informed environments, particularly in the field of homelessness. That's our central concern here. The idea of a pie could apply in a lot of different situations, but our main focus here is around homelessness. This is our first video of 2016. It's we are towards the end of January, and there's a lot that's been happening and really a lot coming up. So, if you are coming here for the first time, if you're new to the idea of a psychologically informed environment, I'd suggest that you have a look at the section called The Idea, which is about the idea. And there you'll find a number of videos linked to a number of papers and so on that are discussing what we mean by a psychologically informed environment, why it's appropriate, why do we bother with even this, and so on. A very useful toolkit produced by a colleague of ours, looking at how you implement a psychologically informed environment approach in a number of settings, and a few interviews and discussions with colleagues up in the northeast who've been developing training programs for local services. So videos, podcasts, written papers, all of that stuff we then put in a library area, which you'll find marked library. If you want to have a look at how the site is designed to sort of browse round and so on, there's also a video there, which is very, very crude, rough and ready, and that's partly deliberate. It's just to show that this is not a real high-tech, high sophisticated program. This is something that we can all get involved in and help to make happen. If you have come across the idea but you want to know a bit more about how does this fit with other things that you've heard of, housing first, trauma-informed care, some of the new ideas like system brokerage for complex needs and pre-treatment, and where does commissioning come into this, and how do we do evaluations, and how do we recognise diversity, and a whole string of other issues like that. Go to the area that we call questions, because there we go into many of these areas turn by turn, and there we have links to particular papers and podcasts that you might find particularly useful. So that's your portal into other parts of the site if you have a particular subject that you're interested in. But there's only there's a limit to how much one page can actually cover all the different things that we have here, particularly in the library area. It starts to look like a sort of bristling pine cone if we're not careful. So what you'll want to do at some point is to go to the library. It's for registered members only, but if you register, you'll then find that we use a number of keywords that allow you to then trace around and find other items, like I say, podcasts, videos, published papers, policy documents, and so on. I'll come back to the keywords in a bit, because there's quite a complicated task developing keywords when you're trying to communicate not just over a very, very broad subject, which is also intrinsically very multifaceted, but increasingly what we're trying to do is to take a debate and a discussion that began in the UK, particularly in England, and to take this further afield with transatlantic, into other countries in Europe, where similar things are happening, but we don't necessarily have the discussion going there to enable people to hear what each other is doing and learn from each other, and that's what a community of practice is all about. So, the two new really big initiatives for 2016. The first is developing those transatlantic dialogues, and I myself will be making a field study tour of the US and Canada in the spring, trying to develop and discuss ideas and approaches that travel across the pond and find the common language, and where sometimes we are misleading and misunderstanding each other by using different words to mean the same thing, or meaning different things by the same words. One of the key elements of that study tour is going to be using new live streaming technology, broadcasting and what they call narrowcasting, so with an invited group. And this is the second major development for the PIELink community this year, which is the maturing, should we say, of a lot of this live streaming interactive technology. Over the last year it's become real cutting edge area for website development, and the technology is getting easier and easier to use, and it's almost always free because people are trying to sort of capture the market. That's the way web development works. And we've got a number of interviews and discussions, particularly by a colleague of mine, Ray Middleton, up in the northeast of England, who who's been really pioneering in both senses of the word. And this is going to be one of our major areas for next year. Now, if you have registered on the site, and if you've used a number of the keywords that we've suggested, we will be able to identify in advance people who might be interested in a particular subject, a particular video, a particular discussion that's coming up. If you haven't used those keywords, we're not going to know, and we don't electronically have a way of browsing to find who might be interested. The newsletter, which is going to be now monthly, will be able to give us a bit of an indication as to what's coming up, but it's mainly about what's just happened. So if you want to be involved in the discussions as they happen, let alone suggest new areas that we might discuss, it would help enormously if you used some of the keywords, and that way we can identify you. Developing keywords has been an awkward task with such a complex and multifaceted subject, and so we are going to be developing a questionnaire to allow all of our existing users, and then for new users as they join, to comment on what you found useful, what you haven't found useful, what you'd like to see that you didn't find here, and so on. So this is all attempting to make this online community practice more and more of a participating community. So that's it. So far so good. Now leap in, have a look round.